So in November 2015, I wrote an article for a right-wing libertarian website about why I wouldn't be partaking in the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. At the time I wrote the article, I was a centrist libertarian that was anti-capitalist, anti-socialist, and anti-feminist. I also claimed to be anti-MRA at the time, but come to think about it, I was probably a lot closer to being an MRA than I would have cared to admit. But right now, as of February 2017, I identify as an anarcho-syndicalist and intersectional feminist. In this video, I'll be outlining and detailing my journey from anti-feminist shitlord to intersectional feminist cultural Marxist cuck. So I guess the shitlordery started when I established myself as a member of the skeptic community, which was basically led by your two favourite shitlords, TJ the Amazing Atheist, also known as What R/Red Pill Looks Like, and Thunderfoot, the professional Anita Sarkeesian historian. But to give credit where credit is due, this community was very good at debating theism. So when the dialogue shifted from religion and atheism to social justice and feminism, I decided to follow the skeptic community thanks to their established faux intelligence. And it just so happened that the skeptic community landed on the anti-feminist side of the spectrum. So after about a 1 to 1.5 year span of moderate dislike of feminism, I start falling down the rabbit hole of anti-feminism even further to watch people like Milo-loving and Ben Shapiro. But luckily to my centrism, I was kept at arm's length from those two since they were far to the right of me. But then Black Lives Matter entered the social justice dialogue, and as much as the atheist community hated Black Lives Matter, I couldn't bring myself to agree with them. So I supported Black Lives Matter, but still identified as an anti-feminist. However, at this point I was slightly disillusioned with the anti-feminist movement. I'm going to put that down to the fact that I was, at that point, more sceptical of the skeptic community. So that was in about April or May 2016. I'd also like to point out that it was in my first year of doing my A-levels at this point, where I did sociology. A-levels, by the way, are like your final 2 years of schooling before going into university. And if you watch people like Sargon of Akkad, for example, you might have been led to think that sociology lectures are just filled with leftists trying to indoctrinate the youth. This might happen elsewhere, but it certainly was not the case for me. Okay, so fast forward to June 24th, 2016, and Brexit happens. I was a Remain supporter, and in my loss of the referendum, this launched me further to the left, and I begin to identify as a libertarian socialist. This softens my aversion to progressive politics. So thanks to Milo-loving supporting the Brexit camp, I unfollowed him on Twitter and started trying to find more people to watch. And while searching YouTube for somebody new to watch, I noticed that a YouTuber called Garrett had made a response to Armoured Skeptic, who I was a big fan of. So I watched the video, hoping to poke some holes in it. But I couldn't. There's a lot of it I disagreed with, obviously, but I couldn't disprove it. And then it occurred to me that maybe I hadn't actually been watching any feminists on YouTube. I hadn't actually heard any feminist arguments. I was only used to arguments, or I had only heard arguments, that Milo-loving had assured me that some feminists had made to him. So I begin to identify then as somebody who has sympathy for feminism, but is still a non-feminist. And then Tyler Preston, who is another YouTuber I was following at the time, made a video against ContraPoints, and while watching Tyler Preston's debunking of ContraPoints, I'd noticed that I was agreeing with more of the arguments that ContraPoints was making on the topic of racism than Tyler Preston. So I go over to ContraPoints' channel. ContraPoints had made a video on rape culture, which I watched, and it made a lot of sense. Basically, all of the arguments I'd been making against the idea of rape culture for months had been shattered in a matter of like 8 minutes, and then I begin to agree with these feminists. And all of this is going on while I'm studying psychology and sociology, and therefore I begin to see some support in the idea of social construction through people like Albert Bandura, Hurtado, Judith Butler, etc. So I started to identify as an anarcho-communist in about July, then going on to realise that feminism is an imperative part of anarchism, especially internationally, and then I began to identify as a feminist in around August, and then I learnt the term intersectional feminist through doing work in English on The Colour Purple and Kimberly Crenshaw, and that seemed to fit my worldview. So this is where I am. And thus ends the tale of anti-feminist shitlord to feminist mangina cuck. I was having this discussion with Sean and Jen and Garrett on Twitter the other day, and I managed to pick up some of the retweets and likes I'd got from Twitter a few months ago. So I'll have about 4 of those up after this, so you can just see how bad I was. But anyway, thank you guys for watching, see you next time, and ta-ra.